We got a first taste of what the young stars might have in store for themselves this season at the Young Star Classic.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jess, and thank you so much for joining me today. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today, we're going to talk about the weekend happenings from they're in British Columbia, I believe, for the Young Star Classic, and just how things kind of turned out. And I mean, obviously, we know this isn't like a true set in stone idea of what these players might look like 3 months from now, but we did get to see them hit the ice, and there's plenty to talk about. So make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are back with daily shows now, and I am so excited to get to talk to y'all about the Flames and hockey and what this season is probably going to look like. And let's start at the very beginning. So obviously this past weekend was the Young Star Classic. The Flames played Winnipeg, and of course we had our baby battle of Alberta. They lost in overtime to Winnipeg, and we're going to talk about this in a second, and they beat the Oilers. Good stuff. The game against Winnipeg, what stood out for me was they went down early. If you follow me on Twitter, you saw that a lot of us were in agreement that, okay, Flames are back. You know, that 1-0 them tweet went out from at NHL Flames, and we're back. But in all seriousness, they did fight. They fought back well enough to go to overtime. And, these are just preseason games, a way for these kids to get, kind of their footing underneath them and to kind of showcase themselves a little bit. So, I mean, not everyone is going to get up for them and, play in a risky way that could jeopardize like their actual season. So, you have to take that into consideration as well when you're looking at every preseason game, not just, these little fun ones for the kids. But the biggest standout this weekend had to have been Sam Morton. Sam Morton is a college free agent signing who just absolutely came to dominate the Young Stars Classic. Obviously, there was the kind of debacle last year with the Flames not getting like the paperwork in on time and like missing the deadline or whatever that case was, but that didn't hold Sam Morton back at all. I think the Flames really did a pretty solid job with scouting him and picking him up. I think that he has like a finesse about him. He has the skating ability. He has the shot. He has that focus and really everything you're looking for in a player and what the Flames need to restock and build back what they lost. And, he was everywhere he needed to be at the right time. I thought that he had really nice passes. He, end to end, just looked good. And that's a real positive considering where I think a lot of people are kind of gauging this season. Obviously, this is just kids against kids, but it was a start and we'll take it. I thought that Misa played well as well. He looked fantastic out there, as well as Stromgren. Both, like all three of them just looked I don't want to say NHL ready, but they looked like they were taking the right steps. Obviously, Misa just got drafted, but he looked pretty ready out there, and I think that that's great because the closer you are to NHL level, like truly NHL level, the better this is for the Flames, and the better it is for the fans that are watching the product night after night. Um, and that's the hard part that we're going to talk more about later this week, and that I talked about a bit with JD Young a few weeks ago from Locked On Sharks, because you need to get better, but you have to take your medicine to get better. So finding these little bright spots in some of these kids is going to be what gets us through these next few seasons. This is just the start of their test, right? They're coming into camp. They have been training all summer long. They have been working for this. They have been putting their best foot forward, whether, they're whether they've just been drafted or undrafted free agent, or if they're returning to an NHL camp. And we're going to talk about Sam Honzek coming up next, because there is so much to unpack here, and it's easy to just focus on the negatives when there might be some positives here. But we will take a quick break and talk about our good friend, the other Sam, right after this. You have heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little bit different for you. Right now, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a free 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. We are back 5 days a week, and that means a lot of Flames content, a lot to talk about, to unpack, to look at from different angles. And I'm very grateful to be doing this. This is my 5.5 season. Say half because I came in very late in 2020, and then we had the bubble, and that's just like a half season right there. But speaking of late, Sam Honzek struggled this weekend, I would say. I feel like he is under a microscope, and I understand why. He is a first-round pick, and it was not one that people took too kindly to. It wasn't one that really anyone saw coming, but it happened. We can't go back and have someone change their mind and redo the draft. So Sam Honzek is currently the Flames' I don't want to say problem, but this is our project. He is part of this reclamation project, just like the rest of the team. And we already knew that he was, quote unquote, behind because of the injuries that he's faced. And it's not like it's, a one and done situation. He missed time previously with an injury and then had another injury this year, and that sidelined him for a bit. But you have to take these things into consideration when you are evaluating a player. That's kind of why a lot of us last year said that Connor Zary would spend most of the season in the AHL, because he needed time to build a better foundation for himself and get himself to the NHL level. And we can be entirely wrong with these things. That's the beauty of this game. The same way that you could put all your eggs in one basket with a prospect and say, this is the next Matthew Tkachuk. I don't think there's currently anyone in the Flames system that anyone's saying that about, but you can't just put it all there. You're going to be miserable, because if things don't work out that way, you're going to feel really bad. It's fair to be critical. I don't think that anyone is going to argue otherwise. These are the players of this next Flames generations. We don't need to have like a bunch of third and fourth liners creating a roster. That it doesn't work out too well for you. But what you can do is you can notice that, Sam Honzek did struggle and created a lot of turnovers. There were moments where it was, kind of like just pure frustration, and I understand that. But then, Zayne Parekh made similar mistakes. And both are first-round picks. Parekh went higher. And everyone's going to make mistakes. Like, there is no doubt about that. It does not matter if you have played in this league for 10 years or 10 months. You're going to make mistakes. And I do think that some players get a little bit more wiggle room than others, but, I don't think you need to completely just give up on Honzek. He needs, oh my gosh, he does need to get better at skating. He does have some skills he needs to refine, but that comes with time. He spent all summer training with Martin Pospisil back home, and it's important to have someone to obviously work with, but obviously emulate their work ethic. I think that goes for any situation, right? Like, I know that at work, I like to model how I approach things or how I tackle large projects after a seasoned employee and someone that I have a lot of respect for. And having a friend that you can train with back home who has also overcome some serious injuries, and that you're, local, and that's literally playing for a spot on the national team for the Olympics, that is someone you want to work with. That is someone you want to. Not saying you necessarily want to throw similar hits as Marty, but there are certain behaviors and techniques and work ethic styles that you want to pick up, and you want to see all of that translate to on the ice. And then here comes the hard part. There are bound to be prospects that just don't make it in your system or in the NHL at all. Who you are projected at 18 years old is not who you're going to be at 23. And that's sometimes very tough. And that goes for real life too, not just athletes and prospects, right? You can, look at, like a David Pastrnak. He was a late first round pick. They were like 25, 24, 25 teams that passed over him. And look at him now. I think it's just important to remember that, like, everyone's development is different. Hunter Brewsterwich is going to look different than Sam Honzek. Sam Morton's is going to look different from Zayne Parekh, or, Dustin Wolf's is going to look, it's not really fair to use him because he's just exceptional at all levels except the NHL. Yet he has not had experience to get to that point just yet. But, let's say like Dan Vladar. his development was very different from some of these guys coming up. His first time at the NHL level was in the bubble in a playoff game that his team was already down like 6-0. There was nothing he could do. Throw him to the wolves. Welcome to the NHL, buddy. So, everyone learns at a different rate in different circumstances, in different environments. And, Honzek is going to go back to the WHL. More than likely. He could play with the Wranglers, actually. Yeah, he's probably going to play with the Wranglers, but he needs time. He needs time. And some of us need more time to cook than others. You can pop out of the draft and just stroll your way into an NHL roster spot. Some teams have that immediate need and you fit that. The Flames don't currently have that with Honzek. Could a player, I wouldn't even put Zayne Parekh in that conversation right now either, because it's the Flames have what they need on the back end. I would think there are players ahead of Parekh who have kind of put in their dues and worked their way to an NHL spot. Granted, things can change, organizational needs can change, players leave, whatever the case may be, but I don't think that he's there yet. There's still, again, some refining that needs to be done. But coming up next, we are going to talk about the preseason, because believe it or not, Sunday, the Flames play an actual preseason game. And we will be right back after this. Thank you so much for making Locked On Flames part of your day. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. So later today, the Flames do play, or the Baby Flames play in another game. I believe it is against Winnipeg. Or sorry, it's against Vancouver. And they'll be playing another game. I would say keep your eyes on Sam Morton and Stromgren. I think that both of them really were the standout players of the weekend. And again, you can't put too much stake in all of this, but we knew Sam Morton was going to be good when the signing happened, but the fact that it's actually happening is kind of unbelievable, at least in the preseason. And, he did play well in the postseason for the Wranglers as well. And maybe we will see more from him. And if not at the NHL level, you should absolutely be checking out the Wranglers. I'll have coverage of them as well this season. But the Flames as a whole are going to be hitting the ice for camp. For, whether they are the veterans who kind of obviously have their spots, or they're the young guys like Coronado playing for a roster spot. I think that this is a great opportunity to, again, kind of gauge where everyone's at. You can get a feel for where these players are, because you have two players like Connor Zary and Martin Pospisil, who both played at the NHL level last year, right? You know that they have that season under their belt. They have that experience. And now I would not call them, they're not veterans, obviously, but they can still teach the kids that are coming in about the work ethic, about the different, this is different from the AHL. We have those private flights. We have, these team meetings are a lot more rigid and strict. You're playing with guys who are sometimes old enough to be your dad, in certain cases. But I think that it's a great way to gauge where all these players are at. This week, really, I'm keeping an eye on for the young kids, Pelletier, Coronado, Morton, and probably, I would say Jeremy Poirier. Just because I feel like he is the next blue line prospect to like make that jump. And obviously Dustin Wolf, I feel like that goes without saying. Eyes are on him regardless. But that way you can kind of see, this is where they're starting camp. This is what their in-game performances look like. And this is what, they're going into the season with. Have they outplayed someone else to earn that roster spot? And that's obviously that's up for debate pretty much with any player. I personally want to see Matt Coronado playing at the NHL level. I want to see him on the power play. I understand that is like something that is earned. But he needs to be getting that extra time. And I think that he has a great shot. Last season, the Flames were seriously missing Rasmus Anderson's clapper, like without a doubt. And Mackenzie Weegar kind of took over there for a little bit, and which is great, but you also need someone else that can kind of shoot the puck, right? And he has a good shot. He has decent accuracy, and the only way to get that better and to refine that is to play him. So I am keeping an absolute eye on him. I'm also going to be keeping an eye, obviously, on Jacob Pelletier. Missed a chunk of last season with an injury, came back, got re-injured, and then couldn't find his bearing, and then was sent to the AHL. He needs to have a strong camp. Like, there's no other way to put it. He is on a 1-year deal, and he does have arbitration, or he's eligible for arbitration at the end of this season that, hasn't even started yet, but that is something you need to consider. And he needs to make the NHL roster. And last season was supposed to be his, and then he got hurt in the last preseason game against Seattle and missed most of the season. And I don't think that, he's going to miss an opportunity to make the roster and then immediately trade him because, a team's going to want someone like him with team control left or anything like that. I don't think it's going to be one of those situations, but I do think he's on a prove it deal, essentially. So that would be kind of the main goal of this whole season. And it's a good way to start off the season. And I think that him and Huberdeau do have a special on ice chemistry connection as well, obviously, as the off ice. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to kind of see them together at some points throughout the game. I think that, Huberdeau is fully aware of his lack of speed, but I do think that Pelletier does give him something to work with a little bit there, and we did get to see that 2 seasons ago. So maybe we will see it 2 seasons later. I think in terms of established Flames players, you obviously have to keep an eye out on players. I want to see how Dan Vladar is doing after his injury and his surgery, season-ending surgery. Obviously, not great, but he was he didn't really have a good season. Let's be honest. But he needs to bounce back. He's also a pending UFA, so realistically, the Flames can do whatever. It's been talked about Cam Talbot probably being on the move. I mean, I don't see why they would do it, but the Flames could absolutely bring back Cam Talbot. I mean, why not? Personally, I wouldn't. Unless you're doing the 1-for-1 with Dustin Wolf every other game, because then you have an established veteran. Cam Talbot carried the Flames back in 2020. Real ones remember. Prior to Jacob Markstrom, he took over in January of 2020 and, like, stole David Riddick's job. That was nuts. That was a time. That was right around the time I actually started covering the team. But, yeah, no, you wanna keep an eye on players. I'm interested to see who else, we will see and what, ultimately what the roster looks like at the end of this. Next Sunday, the Flames do play the Seattle Kraken and in a preseason game, and quite honestly, you should watch. I mean, if you want to get a gauge of the team and the prospects and you're interested in following along, you should watch these games. And the Flames do play another Young Star Classic game later today, so why not? Again, well, if you can, it's at 3:30 Calgary time. If you're not at work, throw it on and kind of just see, like, what do your own scouting report of some of these players. And I think it's important too to, like, follow different people that also, cover these guys, because they might be picking up on something that you might not see. And I think that that's the great part of hockey Twitter and a lot of people who cover really any sport. But that will do it for me today on Locked On Flames. Thank you all so much for joining me. We are officially back in season, and I could not be more excited. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your team every day. You can follow me on Twitter at Jess Belmosto, and I will see you tomorrow with more Calgary Flames news.